All right, so welcome back. As was mentioned in a previous video, there's three special types of bar graphs, three different types of bar graphs that we're going to work with, not just regular bar graphs. We did talk about how important things with bar graphs are labeling, titles, labeling, um, intervals for the bars, making sure everything is clear. Graph paper helps. So the three different types of special bar graphs that we briefly talked about: segmented bar graphs. Again, they have within each category there's different proportions kind of visually shown out of 100% or out of one that show the different amounts that were in each of those categories. You have to add up to 100%. Side-by-side bar graphs really compares two different, a lot of times, years or groups within a category. So you can clearly see side by side the difference. And then a mosaic plot is a modified segmented bar graph in which it is a segmented bar graph, but it also shows the proportional width of the number of individuals in the category on the x-axis as well. So it's like a double segmented bar graph. So let's do one of each of these. We're going to start with the segmented bar graph, and graph paper is going to be super helpful here. So make a segmented bar graph to compare the distribution of survival status of each class of travel from the Titanic. So we have that here. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do whenever you're doing a segmented bar graph is, first of all, if we're making this, I'm just going to make mine like this. I'm going to use black here for the lines. I'm going to make mine go like this. So I have a little bit of space in the margins. And I'm going to decide my categories within this bar graph. In my categories, I'm going to use, you could do two different ways. I'm going to use first, second, and third class, and then just within that category, the percent that survived versus died. And so let's just do right here. We'll go, this is going to make my bar for first class. Leave a break. This is going to be my bar for second class. Leave a break. And third class. Now, again, there's not always a break. It just depends on the bar graph, but typical bar graphs do have a break in between. Now, within that, I want to figure out, I'm going to do it based off of relative frequencies. All right? Not just the counts. Now, you could do it based on the counts, but we're going up to, hundreds. And it's more often that you're going to use frequency. So I'm going to label this left side as frequency, relative frequency. We have to check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be 0.5. This is going to be 0. And this is going to be 1. I kind of ran out of space there. So that's my fault, but that'll be 100% up there. And my bars are going to go within that. Now, with a segmented bar graph, they all add up to 100%. So this bar should go up to here no matter which one it is. It's up to us then to figure out within each class what percentage of them survived versus died. So we're going to make survived be like this, and you must have a key. And died will be, we'll say, like, actually, I'll just fill them in. All right. So, how do I figure out those relative frequencies? Well, in the first class, we have to figure out each percentage. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I can take this 197 right here out of 319 because we're just working within each class. It's like these are going to be my bars. So the 197 out of 319 gets me about 618-ish. Which means I could do 1 minus that to get 0.382. And that'll give me my total. They add up to 100, total will be 1. Within second class and within third class, we have to do those same things. So I'm going to do those right now. You can take a second to do those as well. And now that I have all those numbers, within first class, second class, third class, I can kind of estimate. So my survival rate in first class was just under 62%. So we're going to go right about here. And then everything else should be right around 38%, died in first class. So I've got my living and my died. Maybe I should just, so I can tell there's something there, I'll do that for survived. Okay, so for survival for second class, there's only 36%. So that's going to be, I'm going to estimate right around here. There's my survived. Everything else, 64% of second class did die. So that's going to be shaded in. And then likewise with third class, it was down to 24%. About 24% survived. So we'll say that's about right here. And we have the rest that died. And you can see when you're comparing the three classes, you can see there's a lot more who survived in first class relative to the total of first class people compared to third class. Okay? And that's a segmented bar graph. I'm going to also label down here, I forgot to label class. And we'll label this at the top as, we could say, the distribution of survival status, survival by class, something like that. That's a segmented bar graph. So the second one is a side-by-side bar graph, and we want to use the same thing. So make a side-by-side bar graph to compare the distribution of survival status for each class of travel. So this is going to be super similar. I'm actually going to just take my numbers from that last one and fill them in. Okay, we had 0.618, 0.382, 0.360, 0.640, and 0.241, 0.759. Okay, those are those numbers. Now, for a segmented or side-by-side bar graph, we're going to start it the same way. Okay, we're going to make our two axes. We're going to label it, but we're going to say, in this case, I'm still going to use relative frequency or survival rate. We'll do class over here. And there's my titles. But within each one, we're going to have two bars. So for first class, I could do the same thing. I can say this is first, this is second, and this is third. But instead of putting them on top of each other, we're just putting them side by side. So let's do the same deal here. Survived. What did we say survived was? This. And then died, we had filled in. All right, so same deal. We have a key. We have it all labeled. Let's just put those on here. So for survived, it was right around 60. Oh, I'm going to label this 10, 20.5, 1. Our 0 is down here. So just over 0.6. So that's going to be my survival. And the death rate for this one was at about just over 38%. So we'll say that's about right here. So it doesn't show clearly on the graph that they add up to 100% like the last one did, but it does show side by side a little bit more clear the comparison of survival versus died. And we can do the same thing for second class. Survival was at that 36-ish%. And death was at about 64%. And then finally third class was about 25, 75-ish. And you don't have to put numbers on like in the boxes. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, But that's why we have the work down below to show what the actual percentages are, proportions are of survival versus death. So we have that to back up the data that's displayed on the graph. So that is a side-by-side bar graph, very similar to side-by-side. The mosaic plot is a little bit different. It's very similar to the segmented bar graph, but we're also looking at within each, like how many were there in first class, second class, third class compared to the total. So we're going to do the same thing. We're not going to make anything on the, I'm going to do this. Relative frequencies, we'll say survival rate again, or mosaic plot of, really we should say, the mosaic plot. I should have said side-by-side bar graph for the survival rate. Ooh, I should even be adding Titanic. Man. All right, this is 0 again. 50%, 100%. So I know that for my segmented bar graph, if I go back and I just take what we did from these last ones, I'm just going to take those same data. Next second here. I have those here now. The only difference is I want to also be able to figure out, like, what is the proportion of first class compared to the total. Okay? So I will have to figure out those as well. I need to figure out, I think I maybe did that at a separate point, but 319 out of 1207, 261 out of 1207, and 627 out of 1207 will give me the other piece of information we need. Because we need to know also how wide these boxes are going to be. So let's start with first class. 319 out of 1207 gets me a 26.4%. So my width on this is going to be 26% of the whole base. So we need to label those as well. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to label this 2, 3, 4, 0.5, 0.5, and 1. And so we can do it the same way. We can still do survival versus death. Like I have, I was doing this for survived, and this for died. So my width for this first one is going to be about 20, just under 25%, and that's going to go up all the way to the top. So that's my 100. So I have 25% for first class. So 25% of the whole thing was in first class. Now within that, I'm going to do the survived was about 62%-ish. So there's my survived. And then everyone else of that group would be in the died category. All right. Now let's go to the second one. Second class, 261 out of 1207 is about 21.6%. So 0.216 I got. So it's a little bit less. But if I add that to the 25, that gets me to about 28% total. Sorry, 48% total. So it's going to go just below this, say to here, and that goes all the way up to the top because this is my second class. That means everything else is my third class. So within second class, we had 36% survive-ish. That's right here. And then 64% died. And third class, we had 24%-ish survive. It's going to go right to here-ish. It will go like this, and then what if I do this? Can I do this? Nope, doesn't work. Anyway, so we'll just color that in. But this way, it not only shows comparing the survival versus died within each class, but it also shows kind of the proportion of people who were in each class. You can clearly see there was a majority of people were in third class because it's that much wider than the other two. And that is the idea of a mosaic plot. It kind of puts that together. So just to wrap it up, we can kind of describe. So it says describe what the graph in F reveals about the association for adult passengers, and it's kind of what we just talked about there. So some different things, like there appears to be an association between class and survival rates. Like any of these, you can see there's association between class and survival. If there was no association, we'd expect the proportion of survivors to be the same for each travel class. But the survival rate for the first class is way more than the survival rate for the second or third class. And that is just based on what we see. But just want to be caution, give you a caution, even a strong association between two categorical variables can be influenced by other things. So we're going to have to dive deeper into data to determine if there really is correlation between the things. But there appears to be some relationship here. And that's Chapter 1, Section 1, analyzing quantitative data specifically with bar graphs. We'll see you next time.